Bishop Henry Valtorta, the Apostolic Vicar of Hong Kong, invited the Irish Jesuits to his vicariate. George Byrne and John Neary left Dublin for Hong Kong, which then became the mission of the Irish province. They were joined in early 1927 by Father Daniel Finn from Australia, and then by Fathers Richard Gallagher, Patrick Joy and Daniel MacDonald.
The Rock was a journal started by the Jesuits very early on in their stay, and it lasted for quite a long time, certainly until the wartime, 1939 or later.
In 1927, John Neary was invited to teach religious knowledge in YN College, a grant and aid school founded by Chinese Catholic Peter Tsui. Daniel Finn and Daniel MacDonald were invited by Bishop Fourcade of Canton to teach at the Sacred Heart Middle School in 1928. Others from the mission were to follow.
The Sacred Heart School in Canton was set up in 1928, and Father Finn and Father MacDonald were there, and quite a few Jesuits actually spent their time in Canton, either in the school or learning the language, or later on in a parish.
Ritchie Hall, a hostel in the University of Hong Kong, was opened on 16 December 1929. Joseph McCullough went to Canton to replace Daniel MacDonald, who was recalled to become the first warden of Ritchie Hall.
Ritchie Hall was started in 1929, so it really is the first house that the Jesuits had in Hong Kong. And we were requested to come and provide some kind of hostel facility for the Catholic students who were beginning to enter Hong Kong University, which was founded in 1911.
Other than safeguarding the faith of Catholic students, Ritchie Hall brought the Irish Jesuits in close contact with the university and important government officials with whom the Jesuits could collaborate to serve the Hong Kong community. In 1931, Daniel Finn became the first Jesuit to be appointed a permanent teaching post at the University of Hong Kong when he became a lecturer in geography.
Father Finn, who taught here, and also Father George Byrne taught in Hong Kong. Father Finn did a lot of research on old sites in Hong Kong. So he dug up quite a number of old relics, which they have in the museum now.
On the 1st of November 1931, the South China Regional Seminary was officially opened by Bishop Valtorta.
The second one was the seminary, to look after the seminary, which was a seminary for the whole of South China. And so candidates for the priesthood came from different parts of China to study philosophy and theology in Aberdeen.
Thomas Cooney, the first rector of the seminary, was a qualified engineer. He set up in the seminary grounds a Marquis Observatory telescope imported from Sligo, Ireland, and attracted keen public interest in 1936. In 1932, Michael Saul and Joseph McCullough became the first tragic loss of the mission. They were assisting victims of a cholera epidemic in Canton when they contracted the disease and died within a week of each other.
Father McCullough and Father Saul, and I was very fortunate to go and see their graves maybe 25 or 30 years ago.
In December 1932, YN College Hong Kong was officially transferred to the care of the Society of Jesus, and Richard Gallagher became the first rector.
And the YN colleges were not actually set up by the Jesuits, but we were very kindly asked to take over one of the Jesuits by Mr. Peter Tsui.
Individual Jesuits took on different work, which they had the skills for, and one, of course, was radio work. Yes, the first one was Father Gallagher, and he gave the midday prayers on Radio Hong Kong for years.
In the 8 decades under Jesuit care, YN has remained an outstanding school for Chinese students, many of whom became Catholics and responsible community leaders. By 1949, total YN students reached 2,112, including afternoon school and night school. There are about 50 baptisms per year in YN. 1933 saw for the first time as many as 5 arrivals within a year. They were John Foley, Richard Kennedy, Thomas Martin, John O'Mara, and Thomas Ryan. On May 7, 1933, Gerald Kennedy took on the running of St. Teresa's Hospital in Kowloon. The first at home was held by the YN Past Students Association on 4th of May 1935. YN Old Boys were to prove supportive to Jesuit causes for decades to come. The mission celebrated its 10th anniversary in 1936 with Thomas Cooney as superior. Daniel MacDonald started to work on a Chinese dictionary in 1937. His successor, Charles Staley, compiled a Cantonese missionary handbook that became a bestseller. Loyola Language School, located at Castle Peak, was opened in September 1937. Daniel MacDonald and 5 Chinese teachers provided an intense 2-year course for newly arrived missionaries. Prior to this, new arrivals were sent to Tsui, China, to learn the language. In view of the decline in Jesuits coming from Ireland due to the war, the language school was turned into a junior seminary for local students in 1940. In 1937, Assumption across the border fell to the invading Japanese army. An estimated 50,000 refugees poured into the British colony in about 3 days. The YN War Relief Association was set up by Thomas Ryan with Daniel Donnelly to mobilize the senior form students to help settle the refugees in Fanling. The association raised war relief funds and organized joint school activities such as those with the Italian convent school to prepare medical supplies for the wounded in China. In 1939, Class 2 boys of YN started an evening school for the poor. YN Chinese Middle School was registered as a standard Chinese school. English was taught in 2 senior classes and catechism in all of the 5 classes. For 2 months in 1939, Edmund Sullivan and Tom Fitzgerald interrupted the language studies to take care of 1,500 refugees living in railway trucks about 20 miles from Loyola Language School. In September 1941, the Austin Road branch of YN with 140 senior students was opened with a community of 4: Patrick Joy, Richard Gallagher, Charles Staley, and Joseph Mackesy.
We did attempt to open another one just before the Japanese invasion in 1941. Actually, it was found for about 3 months and it had to close down.
In December, the branch was brought to an abrupt end by the Japanese invasion, and Richard Gallagher and Joseph Mackesy were imprisoned for 6 weeks. The Japanese bombed and began to invade Hong Kong on the 8th of December 1941. The language school was abandoned and looted. Ritchie Hall came under artillery fire and was requisitioned by the Japanese. The seminary was shelled and hit 3 times. The interior of the chapel was destroyed, but John O'Mara and the seminarians miraculously escaped injury. The British surrendered on Christmas Day. All schools were closed. In April 1942, the Japanese governor invited Edward Burke to reopen YN Chinese Middle School. Only Chinese and Japanese were to be taught. English and religious subjects were not allowed. There were about 170 students and only 30 of the former students attended. In 1942, Colegio de San Luis Gonzaga was opened in Macau. Henry O'Brien was superior and headmaster. Thomas Cooney added university, technical and business courses to it. In late May 1943, Patrick Joy, the superior, and Jared Casey were interned and questioned by the Japanese at Stanley until the 7th of August. Many imprisoned with them were tortured and executed. The first Irish Jesuits ordained on Chinese soil Matthew Corbally, Timothy Doody, Joseph Mackesy, and John Wood were ordained in Shanghai on the 19th of May 1945. End of war. Japan surrendered on the 15th of August 1945. YN College Hong Kong closed briefly on the 31st of July for teaching British propaganda, reopened on the 8th of September. Post-war Hong Kong was poverty-stricken and burdened by the influx of refugees from the mainland. In 1946, Joseph Howardson started the Poor Boys Club for shoeshine boys, modelled on the Belvedere Newsboys Club set up by Thomas Ryan in Dublin. It flourished into the Boys and Girls Club Association, with Joseph Howardson as its chairman from 1952 to 1962. The mission accepted the offer to take over the management of YN College Kowloon, the junior branch at Nelson Street. In 1946, Thomas Ryan was appointed acting superintendent of agriculture. He helped to set up the agriculture department for the government and became the first agriculture officer of Hong Kong. Thomas Ryan was appointed head of the Botanical and Forestry Department, the first time for a priest to hold such a position in the British Empire. Thomas Ryan was appointed Director of Marketing with a staff of 200 strong to plan, organize, and run the wholesale market for farmers.
Father Ryan probably had the most influence in Hong Kong of the Jesuits. He was creative, very creative, and extraordinarily hard-working. He used to get up at about 4 o'clock every morning. But he, apart from his interest in music, he was part of the Hong Kong government after the war. And that time, during the war, a lot of the trees around Hong Kong were cut down for fuel. So every hillside was bare. So he went to Australia and got a whole lot of plants, a whole lot of seedlings, and brought them to Hong Kong and planted them in Hong Kong. So that was a big contribution.
Later in 1948, Thomas Ryan helped to found the Social Welfare Department in the Hong Kong Housing Society. Jeremiah McCarthy developed a method of preserving fish and experimented with fertilizers for the Agriculture and Fisheries Department.
McCarthy was a scientist, and his contribution was starting the cooperative movement in Aberdeen. He started this central market for them, so that they would be able to get a constant, regular price or return for their catch.
Terence Sheridan started the YN Dramatic Society in 1947 to sing Cantonese opera in English for charity.
The water is very cold.
It is always cold at night.
Maybe better wait until sunrise.
With traditional costumes and orchestration, these operas drew large audiences, Chinese and European alike.
We had 2 houses there, and the land, in fact, for building a YN. Even from the very beginning, a number of Jesuits went to Canton and taught in the Sacred Heart School, and so and also they were running a parish. So the connection, it seemed that we were thinking in some way that Hong Kong was not the only stop on our mission. It was to try to have apostolic work in China as well.
In 1947, Albert Chan became the first YN student to be ordained priest since the Irish Jesuits took on the management of the school.
咁佢係哈佛嘅中國歷史嘅博士嚟嘅，咁佢亦都係明史嘅專家嚟嘅。佢嘅語言天分非常之高，成10幾國嘅語言都識嘅。佢又作詩啦，又有咁，但係喺對明史方面咧，佢特別係有貢獻。應該係世界權威嚟嘅，應該係。因為佢識咁多國嘅語言啦。佢有一段時間咧，佢就喺我哋羅馬嘅檔案室嗰度工作，有5年。 咁變咗咧好多喺明末清初嘅時候，中國嘅傳教士，佢哋喺寫翻報告翻去羅馬嗰個檔案，即係嗰度傳去總部嘅時候咧，用唔同嘅國嘅語文去寫噶嘛。咁意大利文有，西班牙文、葡國拉丁文有，乜嘢都有嘅。咁變咗唯一一個能夠所謂涉及咁多嘅資料咧，係佢。
Terence Sheridan edited the first issue of Eastern Messenger of the Sacred Heart, replacing The Rock. Edward Burke was the manager. In 1948, Michael Pelly was appointed Catholic Port Chaplain to bring comfort to Catholic seamen in his Catholic Seamen's Club. In 1948, Joseph Mallon was put in charge of the retreat from China. In 1949, the Communist Army entered Canton, and all the work of the mission there was brought to an end.
I was told to take charge of the retreat, and I was in charge of coming down, getting down and setting up the house down here. Thanks to the French fathers, they gave us a whole flat to live there.
The language school was relocated to the top floor of the French mission building on Battery Path in Hong Kong.
Michael Moran is a strange man. He took a great interest in the people in Aberdeen, and then in a way, through that, he became interested in the police. And he was the first welfare officer of the police. And he achieved many things, like getting them a football field and things like that. And the school, of course, Aberdeen Fishermen's School.
On the 12th of December 1952, the new premises of YN College Kowloon at 56 Waterloo Road was opened by the Governor, Sir Alexander Grantham. Patrick Toner was the rector.
The MEP fathers wanted to sell the building to the government, and we moved out to Cheungjiao. We're the founders of our house, which is now a retreat house in Cheungjiao.
And I remember my first time on a ship coming from Southampton, which took 28 days for us to come out here. I remember I was amazed at myself sitting on the deck sweating, like doing nothing, just sitting there. Especially the language, the food, the customs, everything with the weather, everything was different. I mean, we studied in Chinese in what we called then the language school. After that, in fact, it became the novitiate for young people who wished to join us. But that was because we didn't have the succession of people coming out to learn language.
In 1953, Francis Chan became the second YN student to be ordained priest since the Irish Jesuits took over the management of the school.
第二位喺香港服務嘅啦，就係陳福偉神父啦。咁佢嗰陣時都喺九龍華仁呢度服務啦。因為喺60年初咧，佢咧就係開始喺呢個聖納爵堂呢度開始有傳教工作啦。因為當時好多除咗華人嘅學生喺呢度之外咧，好多嗰啲舊生啦，或者係嗰啲親友啦，或者啲街坊啦，呢附近咧都嚟呢度參與彌撒啊、禮儀啊嗰啲咁。咁所以變咗佢就即係組成一個小嘅堂區之類咁樣，咁啊發展傳教工作啦。
On September 27, 1955, the new YN College Hong Kong on Queen's Road East was opened by the Governor of Hong Kong, Sir Alexander Grantham. Designed by Gordon Brown, a professor of architecture in the University of Hong Kong, the beautifully designed new school on top of Mount Parrish had a commanding view of Victoria Harbour. In October 1956, 59 died and 500 were injured in the 3-day Double 10 riots in Kowloon. John Collins helped to found the Hong Kong Society for Rehabilitation in 1959. In 1964, John Collins set up the CELA office in Hong Kong. John Collins formed the Credit Union League of Hong Kong in 1966.
The credit union movement, which John Collins started, and Rousseau was his right-hand man. But they'd they started credit union movement in Hong Kong, and then gradually they spread to Asia.
John Collins was Advisory Committee member of the Red Cross, Chairman of Family Welfare Society, member of the Hong Kong Council of Social Service, Director of Gabriel Richard Institute Centre. He was awarded the MBE in 1979. In 1960, Herbert Dargan became member of the Board of Education, Chairman of Discharged Prisoners Aid Association, Chairman of Hong Kong Housing Society,
Father Paddy Cunningham, who was really very keen on transport of all kinds, he helped to set up the Road Safety Association and the Air Scouts in Kowloon Mayan.
Patrick Cunningham served as port chaplain in 1963.
Sadly, he was killed, maybe as he would like to have been killed. He was killed in an air crash.
In 1963, James Hurley became the chaplain of Hong Kong Federation of Catholic Students. He was involved in many student movement activities. On March 25, 1963, Francis Doyle became the first Jesuit to be ordained in Hong Kong. Francis Doyle was assigned to China News Analysis, a reputable newsletter on Communist China started by Laszlo Ladany in 1953. In 1964, Thomas Ryan was conferred Honorary Doctorate of Letters by the University of Hong Kong. In 1967, 52 died, 802 were injured, and 1,936 were arrested in leftist-instigated riots between May and December 1967.
The Catholic Marriage Advisory Council was started by Father Collins, Ted Collins. And the Planned Parenthood of Hong Kong was very aggressive in promoting 2 as the number for families. So the church here in Hong Kong was felt that they should do something about this, and so they wanted to promote natural family planning.
In 1967, Kieran Kane became a member of the Religious Broadcasting and TV Advisory Committee, to which he was elected chairman in 1969. Among other broadcast programs, Kieran Kane made 1,500 episodes of midday prayers between 1967 and 1994. In 1968, Patrick McGovern founded the Industrial Relations Institute to help workers to recognize the dignity of their work. In 1976, he was appointed Director of Caritas Social Service Centre in Kennedy Town. Patrick McGovern was appointed an unofficial member of the Legislative Council in 1976 and an unofficial member of the Executive Council in 1980. He was awarded an OBE in 1978.
Bishop Francis Hsu thought we should have a diocesan convention, a kind of a diocesan synod, to incorporate into the diocese the changes brought about by the Vatican Council. So I was asked to be the Secretary General of that diocesan convention.
In 1971, Fergus Cronin, who served as a lecturer in the University of Hong Kong and who had been a member of the Housing Society for many years, was awarded an OBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. The Punui Primary School was transferred to Jesuit management in 1971.
And my business at that time was to make sure that the primary school got private first choice and everything. And it worked out well because, as you know, we had the teacher strike. Good. And at the end of the strike, the teachers in the primary were wonderful.
Kieran Kane became the first warden of Adam Shaw residence at the Chinese University in 1972. Daniel Fitzpatrick was appointed Port Chaplain of the Catholic Apostleship of the Sea, working in conjunction with the Anglican missions to seamen.
Myself and Father Baptista, he was a scholastic at Still. One year at our visitation by the provincial, Father Liam Egan, we brought up the question of the CLC. Most of the members were kids, secondary school kids, university students. There were not yet any adults really. And we told them, really, we have to do something about it, otherwise it will never be any use to anybody. So 1978, he called me up and said, right, you do it. So I started 1978. That's why I went to the World Assembly then in 1979 in Rome. And at that World Assembly, I learned a great deal, and I discovered that formation was very important. So when I came back, I got a young lady. She is now Dr. Aideen Howe, the supervisor of Marymount's. So I told her, look, really, we can't do anything unless we get formation going. We have to start with formation. So we worked together to start a formation program.
In 1979, Xavier House started to offer retreats with spiritual directors and themes in Ignatian spirituality.
我哋嗰陣時，我哋離開咗，即係冇咗初學院之後咧，我哋嗰屋咧，即係思維靜院咧，都係租借出去俾其他嘅團體啦，去避靜啦，或者一啲研習啦等等嗰啲咁。咁所以當我入到去嗰陣時咧，我係第4年神學啦。咁同埋大神父一齊啦。咁我哋都睇翻，即係話呢個思維靜院可以點樣去發展出嚟咧？喺呢個為香港教會咧咁。因為其他避靜院咧都係只係提供一啲地方出嚟咧，俾人租借啦，俾人舉辦避靜啦，所以唔同嘅團體，譬如唔同嘅堂區咧，都係安排啲神師啊，譬如聖母軍啊，去做避靜嘅啫，靈修啊嗰啲咁。咁但係我咧就話如果我哋要用依納爵嘅靈修去做一個主導，去提供一啲呢個 program 啦，所謂啦，避靜啦，或者輔導啦，指導避靜啦，咁係一個即係為一個好大嘅特色同埋好大嘅具體嘅貢獻出嚟嘅。所以我哋我79年嗰年咧，就成年咧就係去安排一啲避靜唔同嘅主題啦。有翻依納爵嘅靈修嘅嗰個主位啦。咁我咧就去唔同嘅堂區嗰度咧，去提議佢哋話我哋有呢啲咁樣嘅全年都有呢啲咁樣嘅主題啦。
James Hurley was appointed chaplain to young Christian workers by the Bishop John Baptist Wu in 1980. James Hurley, a strong advocate of social justice, co-founded Amnesty International Hong Kong in 1982. James Hurley published his book Option for the Deprived in 2008. Bishop Dominic Tang, after being imprisoned in China for 22 years, came home to Huaiyan in February 1981.
咁修會當時咧就決定即係派我去新加坡做初學嘅，咁所以我有幾個月時間啦，就喺九龍華仁住學英文，咁佢就住喺九龍華仁嘅。咁同埋住梗係有一齊食飯啦，咁食完飯有時同佢散步咯，所以就對佢印象都幾深刻嘅。食親嘢咧就冧到好高嘅，嗰啲我哋自助餐咁攞啦，佢就攞到好高。咁咧即係胃口好好啦。咁我哋笑佢啦，即係喺坐監坐20幾年啦，冇乜嘢食，而家出翻嚟啦，食翻嚿半咁。咁 其實背後咧唔係話佢淨係食肉好嘅，其實代表佢嘅人真係好樂觀，其實好平和佢個人。佢放咗監，聽唔到佢對過去有好多乜嘢嘅惋惜啊，或者遺憾啊。有一次我入去間房咁傾下偈咁啦，突然間我望到幅相啦，咁我就問一問，咦？呢個係邊個嚟㗎？咁佢就即係話我阿媽啦咁都冇嘢。我聽嘅時候，點解佢加一句佢話：不過佢幾時死我都唔知啊！我作為一個修道人咁即係可以都乜嘢都為天主付出咁所以當時我準備入初學啊嘛，就係咁聽到呢位前輩咁樣好平淡講一句啫，即係話佢幾時死我都唔知啊！咁但係我眼淚都即係到而家我都有感覺。
Cyril Barrett received an honorary degree of Doctor of Social Sciences, honoris causa, from the University of Hong Kong. In 1985, Robert Ng was appointed Provincial of Macau, Hong Kong, the first local Jesuit to be appointed provincial.
早到30幾年前即係我第一個接手負責呢一個省嘅係1985年，85年係30幾年前㗎。30幾年前咧，愛爾蘭嘅神父已經準備咗，我覺得係好了不起㗎。我哋算係一個比較早本地人接手負責呢個修會嘅一個會即係佢哋好早已經好樂意將啲重要嘅職務俾翻本地人，我覺得係了不起嘅地方，唔係咁多人願意放手㗎但係佢哋好願意。我記得我做嗰陣係幾感動㗎，因為以前都係我老師嚟㗎嘛，而家見到我嘅時候都係即係好有一份敬意我哋嘅傳統咧就係visitation 嗰日，我會逐個會士見嘅，嗰啲傳統嘅老人家會跪喺度求你先祝福佢嘅。呢個係我以前嘅初學師，我以前嘅神師，我以前嘅班主任，而家咁唔係咁容易㗎。呢啲係好了不起，我覺得佢哋覺得係你係長上就係長上，對你一份尊敬喺度所以我好欣賞佢哋能夠做到咁，同埋咁早30幾年前佢已經係咁樣做。
Sovereignty of Hong Kong was transferred from the United Kingdom to the People's Republic of China on the 1st of July 1997.
After the 1994 World Assembly, taking up Marymount was another great maturing factor because they had to grow up. They're no longer school kids, no longer university kids. You're adults in the church in Hong Kong and you're asked to serve the church. And we've done that since then.
We started this Hong Kong International Institute of Educational Leadership really to promote basic human values. It was a 90-hour program and it was mainly focused for teachers. And we started the V show for schools, trying to promote values among the schools itself.
In 2003, Alfred Dagden was conferred Doctor of Social Sciences honoris causa by the University of Hong Kong for his social contributions. In 2008, he was conferred Doctor of Education honoris causa by the Hong Kong Institution of Education for his educational contribution. And in 2012, he received Doctor of Social Sciences honoris causa from the Chinese University of Hong Kong for his social contribution. On the 26th of May 2005, Alfred Dagden, Kieran Kane, James Hurley, and Paulus Agung made a pilgrimage to St. Francis Xavier's tomb monument on Sanshan Island, organized by Old Boys of Wyand, who subsequently raised funds to refurbish the place. Xavier House Ignatian Spirituality Center hosted the first Ignatian Spirituality International Conference in 2006. 2 more conferences were to follow in 2010 and 2014. At Joseph Mallon's 100th birthday party on the 13th of September 2013, 900 of his students, colleagues, friends and family members showed showed up to celebrate the happy occasion. On the 13th of March 2013, Pope Francis became the first Jesuit Pope.
福音裏邊話天主嘅國度就有棵大樹，喺大樹裏邊咧唔同顏色、唔同種類嘅雀仔都揾到有棲息嘅地方嘅，呢個就係天國。其實呢個應該係教會，係唔同嘅人有唔同嘅聲音。咁以往啲教宗可能就比較係重視啲傳統，咁有個好處嘅，有個需要嘅，咁但係方濟各教宗就比較係大家都覺得佢係開放好多啦，能夠願意去講啦，同埋佢講慈悲啊，天主嘅慈悲愛係好令我好深刻嘅。呢個正係我做耶穌會士，我諗呢個就係耶穌會士裏邊我哋嘅靈修咯，就係我哋係罪人，但係被愛嘅罪人。呢個就係個慈悲，個被愛經驗就係天主嘅慈悲。所以喺呢個世界，特別現今呢個香港現今嘅世界裏邊咧，更加需要講慈悲。所以覺得係呢個天主特別派方濟各教宗喺而家做教宗，就係要將呢個信息喺而家咁紛亂、咁多仇恨嘅社會裏邊，我哋一定要翻去慈悲。慈悲唔係甜品嚟嘅，慈悲係主菜嚟嘅。咁我哋嘅社會先有希望。我哋嘅前途，我哋嘅年青人先有希望。
On the 31st of July 2014, the Feast of St. Ignatius of Loyola was celebrated in Wyon College, Kowloon. In 2014, street protests were staged by students fighting for democracy from the 26th September to the 15th December.
咁香港亦都係啲好繁瑣嘅地方啦，呢個熱廚房咁樣。咁除非我完全係出世係唔理世事啫，但係我哋耶穌會係入世噶嘛。喺香港我可以扮演咩角色？喺華人咩角色咧？咁其實都係一個衝擊嚟嘅。我好老實講，因為我係校監。我盡量係要中立嘅。其實我哋耶穌會教育係鼓勵我哋教育我哋有個獨立思考同埋有啲建設性嘅批判性思考啊，唔係破壞性嘅批判性，係建設性嘅批判性思考。其實我哋有需要我哋自己都可以獨立啲去睇嘢咯。
In December 2014, Sean Coughlin, Sean O'Carrollon, John Russell and Alfred Dagden participated in the making of a video on the services and accomplishments of the Irish Jesuits who came to Hong Kong.
I'm very proud to say that I have a permanent identity card for Hong Kong, and I can get in and out of the airport and anything by just putting my finger on a little button, and I'm through.
I should have mentioned that the stroke was a great blessing for the CLC. It helped them, before 1994, it helped them to start growing up. They looked after me and decided that I couldn't die, so I had to stay. This is a pet idea of mine, and it's good to put it on record that in Hong Kong we are always known as the Wyon Fathers. We are not really known as the Society of Jesus, so we don't have any vocations. Really, we have to start making ourselves known as the Society of Jesus.
And then from 78 to 90, I was the warden of Ritchie Hall. That was a time I enjoyed. And I've kept contact with groups of the boys who are now working in Shanghai, invited me to visit Shanghai and meet them there. And another group working in Beijing invited me to go to Beijing. And all my friends are in Hong Kong. So, and Hong Kong is a place that grows on you. The longer you stay, the more attached you get to it. So I leave my bones in Hong Kong.
I think the time is gone for me to go back to Ireland. I've always found in Hong Kong, it's other people who make you valuable. It's other people who help you. And when I look back at all the many good people that have helped me along the way, I'm just full of gratitude to them, because without them I could do nothing.
In January 2015, Adolfo Nicolas, Superior General of the Society of Jesus, visited Hong Kong and met with representatives of Jesuit collaborators. On the 22nd of August 2015, Clement Tsui became the latest YN student to be ordained priest. In April 2016, Thomas Leung, Robert Ng, Stephen Tsao, and Stephen Tong were interviewed to provide assistance for the production of a book and a video to celebrate the 90th anniversary of the arrival of the Jesuits in Hong Kong.
而家我哋係中華省啊嘛，咁有埋台灣啦，有埋澳門啦，有埋香港，有埋中國大陸添。咁變咗，即係我諗嗰個定位咧，就某程度咧唔係純粹香港本身啦個重點，即係話我哋都點樣去參與呢個中國大陸嘅嗰個傳教工作啦，係咪忽略咗呢個香港本身嘅教區嗰種嘅培育咧？我而家做緊呢個婚姻啊、家庭嗰個培育啦，而家有成27年啦，婚前啦同埋夫婦培訓班啦，有好多學員啦，佢都去呢個中國內地嗰度咧，唔同嘅堂區嗰度咧，都有培育個家庭啦咁。即係我諗呢個都係唔係淨係我哋耶穌會士直接參與，我哋都點樣去影響又好，或者係培育一啲教友啦，或者其他人咧，都去參與。所以教育咧都係培育下一代啦。咁啊，呢個係直接喺下一代嗰培育啦。咁但係喺婚姻嗰度咧，實情都係培育翻嗰啲父母點去即係有佢哋嘅靈修啦，有佢哋嘅天主教嘅婚姻嘅嗰個價值觀啦，去培育翻佢哋下一代。
今年入會50年啦，回顧嘅時候呢，我就會好感恩嘅。我出身係老教友家庭啊，我諗現代嘅耶穌會士裏邊冇乜幾多個有我咁樣嘅背景啦。我第8代係教友，咁我嘅家族裏邊出好多神職人員，甚至主教都出過。我升神父嗰日係我媽媽最開心嘅日子啊！呢個感謝佢能夠咁支持我一路嚇，冇任何障礙啊！之後呢50年裏邊呢，我就感恩嘅地方呢，就喺牧民工作上邊，我自己覺得做得好愉快。我最大嘅滿足感呢，就係能夠教導到人認識天主啦，能夠為佢呢啲教友服務啊。咁我喺聖堂做牧民工作都做咗20幾年啦，喺上次資助小堂冇換過啊，做咗20幾年帶領唔同嘅會啊，特別係基督生活團啊呢啲咁俾我好大嘅滿足感。我最好嘅朋友都係呢啲，就係我服務嘅呢班教友，我最好嘅朋友。真係想到聖經上面所講100倍嘅賞報啊！我冇子女，但係我有100倍嘅子女。
而家就我哋基本上冇乜神父喺度，已經喺度教書。我哋好重要就係點樣去培育我哋嘅老師啦，我哋嘅員工啦，佢哋就係我哋嘅教育家嚟嘅，喺我學校裏邊嘅教育家嚟嘅，教育者、教育工作者啦。咁再加埋就係我哋嘅校友我哋嘅舊生因為舊生亦都係，如果佢哋明白多啲耶穌會教育咩事咧，佢哋會多啲理解學校點解咁做，咁懂得去點樣支持咯，仲幫支持，同埋甚至係去提點啲師弟啊。咁但係另一樣嘢就係睇到香港嘅教育嘅生態咧，教育有啲嘢係變緊。咁我令我憂心係變得唔係咁好啊！好啲變嚟越功利，好功利嘅教育變得，亦都商業化嘅功利。因為香港嘅教育個生態呢樣嘢係改變緊，而係令到我哋覺得有啲憂慮嘅話，我哋嘅存在仍然係有價值咯。就係我哋有我哋嘅聲音，對教育一啲嘅理念嗰份嘅執着，仍要繼續落去咯。
其實即係希望耶穌會教育咧，唔單止淨係為香港，好似喺香港呢個範圍，而係帶出一個比較國際性嘅視野啦。 甚至同其他中學、耶穌會嘅中學有一種交流嘅計劃啊。咁最近周神父都去蘇聯啦，去到俄國啦。今日唔係蘇聯啦，俄國係同我哋一間中學去交流。咁即係呢啲希望將來個學生可以互通咁樣嚟上堂。咁呢啲遠景係我諗係我哋將來可以去尋夢或者去繼續發展嘅。咁另一方面咧就係咁多謝過去10年啦。咁其實喺即係過去耶穌會一個好所謂家傳之寶咧，就係依納爵靈修啦。咁過去10幾年喺思維靜院咧，其實都係發展得唔錯嘅。對香港教區嘅服侍同基督徒嘅交談唔少基督徒都嚟思維做依納爵嘅退省咁其實為教區提供某一種即係靈修培育嘅一種資源啦。咁唔單止為香港啦，其實過去10幾年，可能尤其我自己啦，同其他一啲會士都會返大陸啦，同中國啦教會咧有一種聯繫嘅。所以雖然少少嘅香港我哋人手可能真係唔多，但係其實嗰個網絡係做得唔錯嘅。尤其同中國教會而家有一定嘅接觸培育喺入邊嘅靈修導師咁我諗為中國教會將來係即係有一份即係靈修上嘅寶藏喺度。
On the 14th of October 2016, as the Jesuits in Hong Kong were busy preparing to celebrate the 90th anniversary of their arrival in Hong Kong, Father Arturo Sosa was elected the 31st General in Rome. 204 Jesuits have served in Hong Kong since 1926. 61 are living today, including 22 in Hong Kong. None will be forgotten.